Good morning and welcome to another edition of App Marketing Conversations. I am Ryan Morrell with Gamehouse. As always, I'm here with Ian Sefferman of Mobile Dev HQ, Roby Ganguliev of Attentive. Last time we connect before the new year and the holidays. Last week we talked about a little bit of what changed in 2013 around the respective businesses and app marketing, and today we're going to talk about some predictions that we have for 2014, maybe some bold, some not so bold. So we'll start today with predictions for user acquisition. So the two big, you guys both did that at the same time. It's so weird. I feel like I need to do this too. So two big things I think is worth talking about as we move into 2014. One is kind of this overarching push towards quote unquote native advertising. And the second, which we'll just call more intelligent buying. So native advertising at its crux, and I think we've talked about this before in App Marketing Conversations, is the consumption of advertising in the same form in which the content is being consumed. So TV ads are a great example. So far today, what we've seen in native advertising, especially with in-apps, has been ads that pop up that kind of look like the app that's being played. So that's not native. But what is native are sponsored posts in Facebook, install ads that kind of look like every other thing on Facebook, sponsored tweets in Twitter. So Roby, we'll start with you. What do you think is going to change? How is native advertising going to change user acquisition in 2014?
Well, I mean, I think the constant innovation is around how to scale these out. So it looks like Twitter is trying to figure out how to scale it out through MoPub, through that channel, and if they can actually get it at scale, what it means for marketers and user acquisition people is that becomes not just a place to experiment, but a place where you can drive real budget, and if they work well, right? Mm-hmm. Assuming they work well, then that's a really new, interesting opportunity to use, a channel that I don't know that many people are using really well for app installs today, right? Like, I know people are using Facebook, but is Twitter driving much of your spend? I think maybe that shifts.
Yeah.
So, I mean, less of a prediction and more of just sort of an open question on my end about native advertising is, so today, part of the goodness is ad networks and things like this. We can make a large spend from a single or two or three sources. I could go to AdMob, I could go to Millennial, and I can spend on a lot of different apps. The question becomes, if it's native, is there a way for somebody to come in and basically make native buying easy for the publisher side? Because ultimately, I think, it's one thing when it's just Facebook and it's just Twitter who have native advertising and that works well. But if native advertising really does work well in the long term, is there a way to buy on 100 different apps or 1,000 different apps at once that all gets a native experience and is easy to do and works well?
Yeah.
That to me feels like a place where native advertising has both issues and opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's interesting about it is, right, like, what does native mean? It means, like, in a specific channel, it feels like that channel.
Yep.
And so I think it means also that the creative is really hard to replicate, right? Like,
Exactly, yeah.
And we always ran into this at Yahoo. It's like you had these 4 units that everybody had creative for, and then you had a whole host that people didn't have creative for. And those were just graphics, right?
Yeah.
We're not talking about things with text that are unique to the audience with, like, an image, and then maybe it's long form. I don't know. It just seems hard to scale.
Yeah. So then the question becomes, if you can't scale it to a lot of different publishers, is native actually a winner-take-all market where Facebook and Twitter are just going to own it?
Yeah. Yeah, and it feels like it might be, right? Because there's only so many of these networks that have scale and signal. Facebook clearly has some amount of signal just based on the overwhelming number of data we have. In some cases, you hear about Facebook advertising really working. In some cases, you hear about it not working so well. But there's only so many companies with that kind of eyeball reach, right? So I think to both your points, and the second thing we wanted to talk about was maybe the simplification of buying, and on the other side, the simplification of selling your inventory. So right now, that there's not a really easy way, unless you're spending big dollars, to go programmatically buy and maximize your conversion and your spend without, having a guy at the end of the day running through a bunch of Excel spreadsheets. And that's probably happening on the ad network side. So what changes do you see coming from that perspective of simplifying how people buy and sell their inventory?
Well, I mean, there's clearly consolidation, right? So some of the ad networks and companies in the ad space seem to be pairing up, and then there are definitely more exchanges in the mobile space, which means that it's becoming easier. I don't know if the tools are really to a programmatic level. So like, I think when people talk about programmatic on the web, they're much more sophisticated than they are for the tools that are existing in mobile today. So I think you're getting more access to inventory, and maybe you have some interesting targeting capabilities, but you're not really hitting a button with these goals and having it just run. And maybe in 2014 we see Twitter execute on that because they have resources. They seem to be pretty focused.
Okay. Everything down there?
Just goes right over my head.
Well, okay, so we want to talk about this, right?
Yeah.
So, like, what do you understand about real-time bidding marketplaces?
I have a high level understanding, and my impression has always been that everything in ad tech is always a little vague, and there's good reasons for that, I think. So essentially, what you get to is some amount of supply coming into the market, i.e., an ad request, and publishers, networks, or whomever lining up to place bids on that impression based on the various parameters that are included with it. So location if they have it, any PID if it's there, device ID, device type, connection, all this stuff. And all these people will line up, much like eBay, and say, I'll give you 1 penny, half penny, blah, 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 and the impression goes to the person with the highest bid. Simplified, but...
Yep. Well, and I think so there's lots of phrases, right? Real-time bidding. What's that mean? I always think it sounds sort of bullshit, right? Like, are you actually bidding in real time? Is there somebody there like, I'll take that for $2, right? No, but it's like the idea that ad buyers used to, in television days, make contracts for like a year, and then they had their price set. And they couldn't really change that much over the course of that year. And now you have this opportunity to actually change every millisecond. And so the way that you get there is you have these algorithms that understand your objective around your campaign. Like, I'm optimizing around installs. I don't care if I pay $2 or $1. I just want the most installs.
Yep.
And then some people are like, I have to pay less than $1 an install. And other people are asking about CPMs. And so you take all of those different advertisers and their goals and bring it into a marketplace. And then the computers are talking constantly about which impression could be the most valuable one across that entire landscape, and that's in theory real time. The reason it sounds vague is that nobody actually has a system that does that perfectly. It's like pretty broken in between the mediation layers. It's kind of confusing, but like, I think the fact that you could just push a button and come back a month later and be like, yes, I was optimizing around installs is pretty cool in comparison to what people were doing 12 years ago.
Yeah.
So.
And I think what we're saying is probably not quite there yet.
No.
But we might get there towards the end of 2014.
I don't know if like the entire market does, but like the offerings of a Twitter, a Facebook, and a Google seem like they're getting a lot more mature. And then there are a bunch of independent players, and people are focusing on it, so it means it will get better faster, I think.
Yeah. I think kind of the general first step around this optimization is on the supply side and making it easier for developers. Because the reality here is that the buyers and the sellers, though in some cases are the same people, in most cases they're totally disparate groups of people. And the sellers are essentially long tail, right? And they need better ways and tools to manage their inventory and to maximize their revenue from their inventory. Which I think is actually one of the biggest arguments against native advertising being kind of the winner take all. Facebook is going to dominate installs, right? Because those developers who don't make it into the top 100 grossing need that revenue, right? And they have qualified users because you know that someone playing puzzle game A is likely a good candidate for Candy Crush. Forget about all the other data that Facebook or Twitter might have. That's a good user probably. And Candy Crush is going to want to buy them. I think the tools yield management, simplifying the daisy chain, making it the waterfall and that daisy chain dynamic based on who's paying, tools like that will make it easier for the supply side. And there are some of those today,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
not
yeah.
widespread.
So when we say yield management, do you know what we're talking about?
Not a clue.
Okay. So the idea of yield management is you have inventory and you're trying to make as much out of it as possible. So for those of you who are watching who are publishers, right, you have 1 million impressions today. You could sell all 1 million for like a penny a piece, or you could sell half of 1 million for $2, per impression, or per 1,000 impressions. That's typically how it's sold. But how you do that, that's yield management. So a lot of times the tools out there are very much saying, we don't have to use all your inventory, but what we get, we'll do this with it, right? And then maybe like if we're really good, we'll just take the stuff we can monetize and give you back inventory that we can't do a good job with, so that some other system could actually make money out of it. So does that make more sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
And it actually yield management came from the airline industries.
right.
Seats.
Seats, exactly. So, I mean, I think there's opportunities there, especially for developers because they're leaving a lot of money on the table.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other predictions for 2014? Well, let's wrap that up. So, predictions for 2014. Hopefully, we start to see more tools for developers to optimize their revenue on the supply side, and we start to move towards a world where there's buying that isn't manual and is truly rational across the market.
Yep.
Yeah, sounds right.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much for watching. Make sure to check out the segments from Roby and Ian on 2014 predictions. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you in 2014.